Hi everyone. Today we're going to install Taymor's new Centinel 3 keyless electronic deadbolt with Bluetooth. The first step is we're going to install the latch into the door. In this case the bore hole is 2 3/4, so we're going to rotate the latch so that it is in this longer configuration. The edge of the door has a square mortise, so we're going to remove the drive-in collar. Next step is to put the base plate on the latch and drop the base plate over top. Now, looking at the latch, you'll notice that there's a little up arrow. That needs to be in the upwards position when it's installed in the door. So taking it, I will now slide it into the door and hold the face plate in with my thumb. Once I have the screws started, I'm going to use my screwdriver to drive them all the way in. Just before the screws seat all the way home, it's good to make sure that the square face plate is properly driven all the way into the door. Now the latch is installed and we're ready to install the front of the lock. Most doors are 2 1/8 bore hole on the door. In that case, this gold colored plate stays in place on the lock. If you have a smaller bore hole on your door, then remove this plate and install the lock. In this case, we'll leave the plate in place. This piece in my fingers right here goes through the latch in the horizontal position, and that the wire passes underneath the latch. So keeping the tailpiece horizontal, I'm going to feed the wire through first, like so, pull it through, then I'll put the tailpiece into the latch and gently slide it into place. And now we are ready to install the back of the lock. You'll notice when you look at the plate closely that there's an up arrow, and there's also a notched cut here that's labeled for where the cable comes through the back plate. When you look at the plate, you'll see that there's an indented section. The indented section goes into the wall so that you can read the up arrow and you can read the cable. I'm just going to pass the cable through the plate and slide this onto the door. Then I'll take one of the bolts. I will put the bolt through the latch and seat it into the front of the lock. So now I can pick up my screwdriver and thread it most of the way home. I don't like to tighten the first bolt all the way until I have the second bolt started. I'm ready for my second bolt. It's the same process. Now I can make sure that this is nice and straight up and down the edge of the door. This long edge should be parallel to the front edge of the door. I can tighten it down a little bit more tightly now. Now we're ready to put the thumb turn and battery case onto the back of the door. First step is to slide the cover off. You'll see that there's 2 holes, a hole there and a hole there, which will allow bolts to go into the back plate. The first step, though, is to connect the wire onto this piece. You'll notice that there's a red dot on the connector, and you'll see there's a red dot on the wire as well. So now I'm going to connect the wire to the deadbolt, lining up the red dots. There we go. Next, there's a little groove on the side of this thumb turn part, which allows the wire to have a place to be stored inside the back of the lock. I feed the wire into there, I slide the thumb turn over the tailpiece, and I slide the lock onto the door. There. Now we're ready to put the bolts in. That's one side bolted. Now we'll do the second side. There we go. I'll adjust this to be sure that it lines up again straight and parallel to the edge of the door. I'll slide the cover plate on so I can really see what I'm doing to make sure it's nice and straight. That looks great. The front of the lock looks nice and straight as well. I can take the cover off again and snug these up a little bit. There. What I like to do now is operate the latch with the thumb turn to be sure it's operating properly. I like to make sure it's operating properly with the key as well at this stage. There. The thumb turn and the key are operating the latch beautifully. I'm ready to put the batteries in the lock and to install the batteries following the diagram. There we go. The beep tells me the batteries are good. Now that we have the lock installed on the door, we're ready to begin setting up our admin code for this lock. In this case, I'm going to use the code 1234. I recommend you choose something a little harder to remember. The sequence to set up the admin code is you enter the code, followed by pressing the lock symbol, and then you enter the code a second time, followed by pressing the lock symbol. Now the lock is going through an auto-handing sequence where the lock programs itself by sensing whether this is a left-handed door or a right-handed door. Now the lock has finished its auto-handing sequence and it's ready to use. Still works manually. We're going to test it by pressing the lock symbol and by using our code to unlock it. The lock locks itself properly. Now we're going to enter our code. And the lock unlocks itself properly. This admin code can be used for any other program you want to do on the lock. The admin code can also be set via your smartphone using Bluetooth. See our Bluetooth video for details on how to set the lock using the app.